Hey yo everybody, what's poppin'? Let's go to Nidori XPH. Today we're going to be educational. Yes, we're reacting to the Defense of the Philippines 1941 World War II documentary by Armed University Press. So I'm gonna start my recording. Okay, so yeah guys, like and subscribe. This is a 42-minute video, so I'll try to finish it, or I'll just make like a second part, like watching it until like 21 minutes. So yeah, let's go everybody. This is educational, okay? And it's in the Philippines, so let's do this. Like and subscribe. Come on, let's go.
The soldier reading these pages would do well to reflect on the wisdom of the statement exhibited in a Japanese shrine. Woe unto him who has not tasted defeat. Defeat brings into sharp focus the causes that led to failure and provides a fruitful field of study for those soldiers and laymen who seek in the past lessons for the future. Orlando Ward, Chief of Military History, 1952.
Oh yeah, by the way, I really don't know much of history. I've watched some history videos. I've known some, like some Europe history. So this is actually my first time reacting to, like, I know some thing that happened in World War II, but this is, I don't know. This is the history that I don't know, so that's the reason why I'm actually reacting to it. I want to learn.
Mere hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces attacked the U.S. Commonwealth of the Philippines as part of its Pacific-wide plan to seize much-needed resources and Manila's strategically important harbor.
Oh yeah, where was that again? Harbor?
Over the next 5 months.
So yeah, they said like they wanted more like supplies, and they really wanted the Manila's harbor because of so that they can go near America, because the Philippines, and there's if you like look at the globe, there's the Philippines and like there's America. Yeah, that's the reason why the Japanese attacked Manila. Is it Manila Commonwealth?
Months, American and Filipino forces would conduct a stalwart defense of the islands that would cost many lives and end in defeat while disrupting Japan's plan for conquest in the region.
Rising storm.
By 7 December 1941, the Philippines, a chain of 7,000 islands in the Pacific, had been a U.S. territory for over 40 years.
Yeah.
Located over 11,000 kilometers from San Francisco, but just under 3,000 kilometers from Tokyo, it was America's first line of defense against the threat of Japanese expansionism in the Pacific. With Japan already in control of the island of Formosa to the north, the Marshall, Caroline, and Gilbert Islands to the east, and occupying a significant part of China to the northwest.
And oh yeah, fun fact, the Philippines is the only country, like, I don't know about this, but I heard the Philippines is the only country that accepted the Jews in World War II. And when like the Japanese came to the Philippines, they didn't bother capturing the the Jews and captured Filipinos. So yeah.
U.S. military garrison in the Philippines was all that prevented Japan from consolidating its gains and driving south to seize the Dutch East Indies' valuable resources of oil and rubber.
Oh.
The American military, however, had concerns about the feasibility of defending the Philippines. As early as 1914,
The guy
then
and
Second
goal.
Lieutenant George C. Marshall was able to demonstrate during maneuvers simulating a Japanese invasion of Luzon
Guyana.
how easily the capital
Luzon.
city of Manila and its major port could fall to aggressors. With a coastline longer than the United States, the military appreciated just how difficult it would be to defend the Philippines effectively.
Yeah, cause
Various changes in U.S. policy also undermined the defense of the Philippines. These included the Washington Naval Treaty, signed in 1922,
oh yeah, I know about this. Yeah, I know about this. The Philippines is actually kind of hard to defend or even try to attack, conquer. For like countries that is not like a superpower like America, China, like those type of countries. I just realized that. Wait, what was that? So they actually the Philippines is surrounded by water. It's actually like an island. So the big problem of the Philippines is if you're like a part. I live in a part where in every year we have a lot of storms coming, and just last year there was 3 storms, and it was like small, medium, and hard. Easy, medium, and hard. So yeah. And besides, if the Philippines is like a superpower, it would be hard to invade the Philippines because of the water and like the geography of the Philippines.
which halted U.S. construction of new fortifications in the Pacific in exchange for Japan limiting the size of its fleet. With only one reinforced stronghold set at the mouth of Manila Bay on the island
Oh,
of
it's
Corregidor,
Manila Bay.
the
Okay.
Philippines' defenses were questionable.
The Navy expects to solve the naval defense problems that may confront the United States in the Navy's traditional way without alliances. It expects to stand on its own feet in providing protection to the United States.
This realization was evident in the Joint Army and Navy's Basic War Plan for the Philippines. Updated in the spring of 1941, War Plan Orange 3 prescribed a limited defense of the Philippines that focused primarily on denying an invader the use of Manila Bay. It also outlined a predetermined fallback plan for civilians and soldiers that acknowledged the difficulty of halting a Japanese invasion force that U.S. intelligence estimated could reach 300,000 troops in a month's time,
Whoa.
as the Japanese established a blockade against U.S. reinforcements and resupply. As such, the plan for the defense of the Philippines is best understood as a delay. If properly reinforced, it was hoped that the island's garrison could delay Japanese forces long enough for additional troops to arrive and partners to commit to the fight.
A variation of a retrograde. A delay is when a force under pressure trades space for time by slowing down the enemy's momentum and inflicting maximum damage on enemy forces without becoming decisively engaged.
Oh. Preparing for the future. Yeah, cause I'm sorry, I'm pausing that much. Yeah, cause Japan is actually near us. It's just like the north of the Philippines, and like America is that far away still. So yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
In 1935, the U.S. Congress voted to make the Philippines a commonwealth with full autonomy at the end of a 10-year transitional period. This change to self-governance shifted the
Oh yeah,
responsibility
President
for the
Manuel
defense of
Quezon.
the islands to the Philippines government and its people. However, it complicated command and control and unity of effort between U.S. forces and the Philippine Army. In response, the Philippine National Assembly voted to stand up a force of 10,000 soldiers, supplemented by 400,000 reserve troops.
They're actually wearing white suits. Okay, it's just, I'm just saying, okay, I'm just saying.
At the request of President Manuel Quezon, Douglas MacArthur, recently retired from the U.S. Army, was asked to oversee the creation of the Philippine Army as Field Marshal and military advisor to the Commonwealth Government of the Philippines. From the start, MacArthur faced serious difficulties in training and preparing the Filipino forces for the future. With some 65 languages spoken among them, Filipino troops were often unable to effectively communicate among themselves or with their leaders. Additionally, the absence of schools for commissioned and non-commissioned officers was a serious obstacle to standardizing tactics, techniques, and procedures across the highly diverse force.
Yeah, because knowing this is a time where some schools that is still not built, right? Because it's like it's very early in the Philippines. It's very early. I'm sorry, it's still very early, and knowing that he said like 5 other languages, so yeah, it's actually hard to communicate with them. It's like, imagine Douglas MacArthur just like trying to speak Tagalog, you know, or hell even our language, like Bicol. Hey.
Severe shortages of weapons, uniforms, and housing also hampered the Philippine Army's training and preparation. Such handicaps were magnified by the lack of military vehicles and permanent roads for transporting soldiers. A feature particularly ominous for forces tasked with conducting a delay, where maintaining a mobility advantage over the attacking force is a necessary prerequisite for success. These handicaps were complicated by a military communication infrastructure that relied heavily on unreliable civilian telephone and telegraph systems. The Philippine Army, however, was not the only military unit training on Luzon prior to the Japanese attack. In 1941, the U.S. Army's Philippine Department, under the command of Major General George Grunert, was headquartered out of Fort William McKinley with over 22,000 soldiers. Its largest unit, the Philippine Division, was commanded by Major General Jonathan M. Wainwright and led by American officers.
Okay.
Though these two forces were originally intended to operate independently, the U.S. forces under Grunert and the Philippine Army under MacArthur began combined training exercises in July 1941.
Okay, so it's actually, imagine that this is a country that is from overthrowing the Spanish Empire and now getting trained by American generals like Douglas MacArthur. Like, we've been, it's been a long time. Hey, because, you know, there's sometimes in history that it sometimes connect, you know, because before all of this, we have like the Philippine American War. You know that was bad. That was bad, and yeah. But thank goodness, America was there to save us. Jesus Christ. Wait, I'm gonna put this back. Okay. Come on, let's go.
As war with Japan appeared more likely. Japan, a member of the Axis alliance, had moved military units into French Indochina and assumed protectorate status over the territory. For the two generals, this posturing indicated that the Japanese could be preparing for additional offensive operations in Southeast Asia and the South Pacific.
They say trouble always comes in threes. Take a good close look at this trio. Remember these faces. Remember them well. If you ever meet them, don't hesitate.
Intelligence analysts assess adversary actions and the posture of their forces to determine their intent and identify indications that can be used to warn of a...
Okay. Philippine Islands. Yes, that was actually called they actually called us the Philippine Islands back in the day. They don't call us the Philippines. They still call us the Philippines, but it doesn't have the S and like the Philippine Islands, you know. And that was funny. The trio, like a film series. Oh god! But this is like the near downfall of the Nazis, right? Yeah, this is actually the start of the downfall of the Nazis, because this happened after they. Oh, this is. Oh yeah, this is. This happened after the attack to Russia. Yeah, yeah, I know that. Invade.
A pending
Sorry,
attack.
invade.
Indications and warnings are tied
To
to
Russia.
timelines that inform commanders of how long before an adversary is capable of attacking.
I don't know. Can you guys like correct me to that if it's like this happened after the Nazis tried to invade Russia or before? So yeah, that's I'm still learning. Okay.
In which course of action they are likely to pursue. These timelines enable the planning and response framework to react in
Dutch.
accordance with the severity of the indication and the estimated enemy course of action. Commanders can then execute measures to deter the enemy from continued hostile acts while posturing friendly forces to respond if deterrence fails.
The occupation of French Indochina triggered a response from the United States designed to ward off further aggression by the Japanese. After placing a freeze on all U.S.-based Japanese assets, President Franklin Roosevelt then halted shipments of rubber, iron, and fuel to Japan and began planning for the military reinforcement of the Philippines.
President Roosevelt's actions, designed to deter further Japanese aggression in the region, are examples of flexible deterrent options, or FDOs. FDOs are established to deter actions before or during a crisis and may be used to prepare for future operations.
Ah.
They are developed and executed using each instrument of national power, diplomatic, informational, military, and economic, but are most effective when used in concert. FDOs provide options for decision makers during emerging crises to allow for gradual increases in pressure to avoid unintentionally provoking full-scale combat, while simultaneously enabling leaders to develop the situation and gain a better understanding of an adversary's capabilities and intentions.
Already reeling under trade restrictions imposed the previous year, this action pushed Japanese military leadership into a corner. Lacking the necessary materials to continue their plans for conquest, they made the decision to go to war by December 1941 if
Oh.
negotiations failed to reverse U.S. sanctions.
Operational plans. I actually like the way they make like the chapters, you know, like operational plans. It's like 80s themed or maybe 90s. It's like it's good. Yeah. This is going to be the start of the war, right? Yeah.
Sensing the coming conflict, President Roosevelt moved to defend the Philippines by combining the territorial Philippine Army with the U.S. Army units already stationed there. He then placed MacArthur in command of the newly combined force.
South Force Luzon, North Force Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao Force, Reserve Force, Harbor Defense Force. Okay. This is neat.
Designated as United States Army Forces Far East, or USAFE, and charged him with defending the islands. MacArthur was also recalled to active duty in the U.S. Army and was soon promoted to the rank of general. Earlier that spring, War Plan Orange 3 had been included as part of the National War Plan known as Rainbow 5. The National Plan was based on a recently signed agreement between the United States and Great Britain. This gave priority for supply and support to the war in Europe over all other areas of conflict. Establishing a timetable for completion by April 1942, the general's plan called for a reinforced defense that incorporated the island's natural terrain features to stop and repulse attacking forces on the beaches.
Yeah, they should. But yeah, that's a good idea because the Philippines has a lot of nature features. You know what he said. Because we have so many bamboo that we can just like take it. Because we have a bamboo at the back of our house. Okay, so yeah, and we have like flowers with thorns in it. We have a lot of those, and like knowing that Japanese can just like walk like maybe rush to like somewhere, just put around those, and if they trip, they're gonna have like some scrapes of some from thorns, and it's actually so hard to remove the thorns because they're too small. They're small. They're sometimes hard to pluck out. So yeah.
While relying heavily on U.S. Army air power to actively attrit the enemy. By building his defense around the terrain and natural obstacles present on the island, General MacArthur illustrated a central tenet of defensive operations.
According to Army doctrine, the commander always takes advantage of the terrain when planning how to position forces and conduct operations. The terrain dictates where a delaying force can orient on a moving enemy force and ambush it. A commander conducting operations in compartmentalized terrain selects locations that restrict the enemy's movement and prevent the enemy force from fully exploiting its combat superiority.
Chief of Staff General George C. Marshall was personally familiar with the Philippines, and after reviewing MacArthur's plan, authorized immediate transportation of the essential supplies and reinforcements that he had requested.
Preparing the defense.
To reinforce the Philippines, Army leadership deployed several National Guard units. The 200th Coastal Artillery Regiment and the 192nd and 194th Tank Battalions equipped with M3 Stuart tanks. MacArthur also received reinforcements for his air arm to include P-40 Warhawk fighter planes and B-17 Flying Fortress bombers. However, shortages in shipping space meant that some items were delayed or did not arrive. In one instance, air crews arrived in Manila ahead of their aircraft, just before the start of hostilities in December. Since delivery of their A-24 Banshee dive bombers never occurred, these airmen spent the rest of the war fighting as infantry. To compensate for his lack of updated equipment and well-trained...
That's, yeah, obviously, because America's still far away.
trained personnel, MacArthur's plan relied heavily on close integration with the Filipino forces. Recalling all 10 divisions of the Philippine Army from reserve for training and refitting, he task organized them into 5 distinct forces. The North Luzon Force, under the command of Major General Wainwright, defended strategically important areas of Luzon. These included the only beaches wide enough and deep enough to accommodate a large-scale amphibious landing. The North Luzon Force also had responsibility for the Bataan Peninsula, War Plan Orange's designated fallback area should the Japanese invasion prove unstoppable. Organizationally, the North Luzon forces consisted of the horse-mounted 26th Cavalry Regiment and the 1st Battalion 45th Infantry, both of which were fully equipped and extensively trained Philippine scouts. These units were accompanied by 2 batteries of 155mm artillery and 1 battery of 2.95-inch mountain guns. 3 Philippine Army infantry divisions, the 11th, 21st, and the 31st, completed Wainwright's command. MacArthur planned to support the North Luzon Force with the Philippine 71st Infantry Division, held in reserve at Manila. This division could only be released with MacArthur's permission. Following the war, Wainwright recalled the situation when he took over command of the North Luzon Force.